Frieren's side characters are different. They're kind of special. There's some really clever ways Frieren is written and drawn, which gives the side characters this living, breathing depth. According to popularity polls, the community has a complete fascination with them too. And for good reason. Look at these guys, the goth bird mage, unique savants of its magic system, ancient beings stuck on a little grudge. Even the few-minute wonders just carry so much weight. Frieren's secondary characters are built different. They're popular. Side characters kill it in the polls at the expense of major characters most times too. Why is this? I think there are a few clear factors in how Frieren handles these characters which makes them different. The thing that makes Frieren's supporting cast stand out from other anime and helps to make its main cast and its world feel even more alive. From Genao and the Hero of the South to Ubel. But to start, everyone has this depth to them. One of the things which makes the side characters in Frieren feel more alive is that they're breathing. They have flaws, agency, depth. There's care taken in the writing that goes past what's normal, which is for a side character to wander in, have their role, but not have a visible agenda or agency outside of that appearance, because they don't need it. But characters here, even if they have smaller roles, they have clearly recognizable motives and agendas. They feel like they can exist and develop even when hanging out with her. They have things they want out of life, motivating principles, and that's not like an obvious announcement of how they're feeling constantly. They're often liars. Characters are capable of acting against their best interests, against their expressed wants, and with all the logic that functioning people have, they have the depth that's closer to something realer, even if they're a smaller part of the story. Think about her, Seri. She has a lot to say about the purpose of magic back in the mage tests, but clearly doesn't live up to that. Let's just quickly analyze this scene here, where she expresses dissatisfaction with her apprentices for failing to spot her mana fluctuations. Because once you know she's full of shit, look at the pride she looks at him with, even while outwardly expressing disappointment. She's very proud of her apprentice son that's been pretty much a failure. It's fine. She loves him, even if he never graduated. She misleads other apprentices to the point of giving them complexes, but that isn't always worn out in how she actually acts around them. Her character's flaws cause problems for the main cast, but it always comes from an understandable and human feeling place. She's a liar, as a reaction to how long elves live. To admit her feeling towards those in her care, that would open herself up to getting hurt. It's a depth that makes the side characters more impactful and memorable, but it also contributes to a richer picture of the protagonist. Good side character writing can have depth like that. So Seri doesn't have a proper way of expressing emotion and swallows down what she can't express, which leads this apprentice to develop a complex about how he's viewed by his peers and mentor, which leads to him picking a fight for no reason and this whole thing. Even as a character, as minor as he is at this stage in the story, he has deeper motivation. We can even see how the difference between what they express and what they really want affects others, with Genao being pushed together with Methode for a mission in the Northern Lands. The right pairing and mission is what he needs to process his guilt over his last partner. But maybe it doesn't quite fit into her stated goal of sharpening mages into tools. But as a clearly caring mentor to these people, it is looking out for their best interests, especially after losing one. It's a pairing which portrays a level of care that's completely unstated. Genao showcases the same emotional repression of being dishonest, even with himself, of what it is he's trying to do. Ubel on the surface is a bit of a sicko, but her actual agenda is much more nuanced. Frieren is a show of a main cast that knows what they are, and everyone they meet is a liar, unable to process their feelings. Even if a character is only having a minor appearance, there's time taken to give them a little more depth. For the bigger side characters, we get to see quite a lot of that depth, with their impact on others stretching out. But even with smaller side characters, we rarely get anyone completely one-dimensional. If they've got a name, they've got a reason for being a part of the story. Even the incredibly small characters, though, they can use this little dramatic trick to make themselves feel like something more, something bigger. Like Frieren's use of mystery in building out the supporting cast. One of the main ways Frieren side characters feel different is often the use of mystery. It can be a powerful tool to make a character interesting, even in small doses. But I think it's just as often used poorly, making a character feel poorly conceived, that there's nothing beneath a generic face, rather than intriguing. Basically, it can be a bit of a risky move in writing. And in Frieren, it's often been a success. A few times now we've had this kind of effect, where a character is fairly minor, only really included to such a degree that we get half a picture of them at most. But it's some of the most memorable Frieren supporting and one-off characters. Yeah, there's him. Obviously, there's him. I mean, yeah, first thing that comes to mind. But there are a lot more. Frieren's mentor, she kind of fits this. She's introduced us as absolute mystery. We only get a bit more information ever. It's very slowly revealed. She taught Frieren this move, and magic too, I guess that also matters. But so much about them is tantalizingly left open. For Flamme, it opens up a ton of possibilities for future flashbacks. She magically predicted how elves in her life would be living an age later, claims to have found heaven, but we don't know all that much about her. It's not that far from how he was presented in the story. It's Frieren's unique time scale that allows these mystery characters to happen. The hero of the South story that we're told is really short. We see a bit of a puppet show, a bit of a flashback, some aura farming. That's it. The story raises as many, maybe more, questions than it answers. It inserts this whole encounter into Frieren's story, recontextualizing a ton of stuff that comes later, and showcases a crazy, impactful character in an action scene. But ultimately, the appealing thing is partially the lack of information. It's a black hole to put your most interesting headcanon onto. We just don't know more than we need to, which tends to get theories going thick and fast. It's something you think about, something that lingers. It has this effect on an audience, not on the story, where the mystery can end up more interesting than any possible answer. The hero of the South is a hero. He destroys a bunch of sages. He speedruns Himmel's journey. You can see the future. It's just the mystery makes them just as appealing as what we get to see. Himmel, on the other hand, he has a big initial impact, but he was introduced to be as much of a human as a hero that's, held up as a lofty ideal. From the day we meet him, it's as a full person, not a question. Whereas the hero of the South is interesting in its vagueness. It's economically written to not include much more outside of what you need to, which makes for a fascinating character. And it's even the case with some characters we know a lot more about. Every scene says something. If we're talking about economy in the writing, I think that's best summed up by Ubel. Every scene she appears in actually adds something. In none of them are they just there for the main character's purposes. As characters interact, it can often feel like side characters. They are just there to facilitate a main character's progress. A conversation happens between a main and a supporting character, where we learn something about the main character, or experience something, or see the story moved along. And the other smaller character, they just exist to let that happen. And yeah, we learn something about the world, but the background characters, the supporting cast, they don't get much to do. Most shows have entire side characters who just exist to develop the bigger ones, but Frieren's side characters go a bit further. Let's look at Ubel. She's the best example for this. In her first appearance where she gets lines in the mage exams, she does fulfill the general story role of warning about the action that's coming later, but her smile at the idea of a battle, that says something about her. In the next, she finds an excuse to avoid waiting out the test and go join the action. And her reaction to death after being threatened, that says a lot. Each is doing something. We learn something new about the character in every scene. It's not just here to contextualize Fern in a new environment. The next scene with her, that even introduces her cutting magic properly. A pretty key thing. Even at the end of the first test, she's a lot more intriguing than most supporting characters. Ubel has an intriguing type of magic and an intriguing approach to life and death, and she's a mage of a cool combat style too. I got nothing that fancy to say about that. It just looks cool, alright? It's easy to see why she's gotten interested at this point. These scenes all do something to develop Fern and build the stakes for the arc in progress, yeah, but they also say something about the side character. That's the difference between a character and a prop. There's no slack in the writing here. The mage exams have a ton of introducing to do, and it does manage most of it really well. The next time she appears, we get to know her a bit more personally, hiding out in a cave. It's a scene that illustrates something about all three people involved, even Fern, who is being noticeably terrible at interacting with anyone her own age. Land is too cagey. She's showcasing already that she needs to probe people's inner workings to really figure them out. And by the way, that's a really clever foil to pair stoic Fern with for her scenes outside the main party. Someone who literally depends on yapping to people to learn magic. It's not just Ubel. A ton of characters have this kind of economy to their writing. Once you're further into the story, those opening scenes with Genau's test where he's discussing magic, they just work a lot better. Hell, even the bird being used. Every scene serves a purpose, and the action scenes, they say something too. They can be really weighted in Frieren. It's a way of using action to fill in character details. Characterization through action. Something I think Frieren doesn't get enough credit for is the interesting approach to action. And by way of that, the art, the character design, and their approaches to combat. This has been top of my mind after I made a video about magic systems. But it really comes down to characters getting a personalized way of fighting and interacting with the action in the series. And usually one that ties into their personality. It's the same as the character design. It's doing storytelling through the details of how they move and fight and more. Like Frieren and Fern are more limited in their spells, which is fine. They're the protagonists, so it's the base we go off of. And even that says something about character. But you know, this video ain't about them always, but it's about the other people. Genau is this emo magical girl transformation stuff. This bird. Method has a whole letting loose section. It's finding ways to incorporate a physical representation of the character arc or core of the character. Genau has flown away from his hometown and become this grand mage, but he couldn't save it later. He's full of self-loathing. And then he grows big, dark, sulky bird rings to let him fly around his hometown. It's a way of making the emotional, the unsaid, literal, sticking it right there on the screen. Their personalities, their characterization, it's there in the design and the action. It's a clever way to make better use of side characters. And that really all comes down to the art. I talk a lot about the writing in Frieren because I tend to use anime clips mainly for editing reasons, but the art is stellar. And this is an area where I think we really have to give props to the illustrator in making the side characters so special, who time after time find compelling new designs and ways to portray mage-based action. Is always design the whole reason for her popularity? Nah, there's other factors. But it is a big one. Ubel's design is cut just right for her role in the story too. The general unease, the slightly sick smile, the reins that Land will have to hold. The whole character is designed around a motif with the physical action in fights. Lining up with that, it's characterization through art and action. Now, Genau's bird stuff I've discussed, but the difference between his proper first-class mage finery in the city and the disheveled state he's in by the time we see him up north, the physical representation of his journey, leaving his hometown, becoming this important mage, and it not helping him to save them. It's all represented in the art decisions. It's the whole character in the art. It's easy to take one element of the side characters and try to isolate it, but I think ultimately what makes Frieren's side characters so special is a mixture of art and writing. The designs and the way an emotion or core concept is brought into the characters, it works. Sometimes even in retrospect, because Frieren is fantastic at revisiting characters that they've already laid down the foundation for and expanding them out, building on what came before. Frieren's writing often serves a purpose for the side characters, keeping the details limited to what is needed. But that can mean there's room to revisit and add more to a character. The best example recently is Genau. Looking back at his appearance in the Mage exam arc, it's weird. He doesn't make a huge impression. But there's a lot of iconography which is followed up later, although we don't get the fullest judge of his character back then. So the season 2 part of meeting Genau again is probably what catapulted him to the top of the popularity poll recently. I mean, as cool as his tea party was, I don't think that did it. Look at this, all of this. It's just a lot cooler than the tea party. But it's actually building off of that setup in a really interesting way. When we first meet Genau, it's here. He's dressed more formally than even his peer mages. He's the proctor of the first test. We regularly cut back to him during that test, but on the surface, these scenes are just about commentary and how the test is going and building towards this moment. We get a lot of speculation about the brutality of the test filtering out the weaker mages, and see him quietly having, his tea party, his aforementioned really cool tea party. Next, he's having a conversation about promising mages dying, where he says no one promising would die if they got good. It's an attitude that works on face value for this test and builds this image of the Magic Association, but it lays a foundation of a character that Genau has resigned himself to this kind of outlook, this hardness against loss in the world, a brittle exterior that won't shatter easily. Now, the payoff recontextualizes all of that. Despite everything he says, he isn't as much of a lost cause as he thinks. There has been something beating away under that brittle exterior, and it's been noticeably enough for his master to pick up on it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be paired like this on a mission in his hometown right after losing a partner. Stark's kindness breaking through and leading to this act of self-sacrifice at the end. That means more coming from the guy we saw exposing that harsher viewpoint earlier. It could have been someone new here, but it means a lot more to take a character from earlier and fill in the gaps. Now, this is the case for quite a lot of this older arc. Quite a few characters are introduced here. It's clearly a load-bearing arc, setting up future developments. But I think there's a more general trend in Frieren's writing that when a character is needed, to check and see who from the cast can be brought back up to fill that role. The whole thing kind of makes the world feel more alive. Like, a lot of these characters are going through their own development and journeys off screen, and we're just checking in with them every now and again and seeing how they've changed. It builds on what comes before. Side characters popping back up often feels less like they've been in a waiting room and more like they've been living their lives. The foundation is solid. Now let's do something interesting with them, or in some cases, let's see a whole life in a short span. Most of the side characters I've talked about so far have been human, but with the dwarves, the elves, Frieren's approach to time in its narrative comes into play. The time scale allows us to see a character's life in miniature. For smaller side characters, we get them introduced, a flashback to some key moments, and the present-day conclusion of their storyline all in one. This happens in the extreme of cases like this little pervert boy, but it's something we see quite a bit in the stuff adapted for Season 2. There's 2 stories about dwarves which are interesting here. We get to see the benefits of Frieren's timescale and its ability to tell entire story about side characters in small doses. We get to see a direct look at what's motivated the thing that's defined their lives, and then the payoff all in one. Frieren being part of that legendary hero's party means the initial encounter we flash back to is pretty much always something important, because to most people, the day they met him or the hero is probably up there in terms of importance to their lives. Then, in the present day, we get a follow-up. For this guy, his life's work gets finished and they find the booze. For this guy, it turned out he made progress while we weren't around. And in both cases, we get a whole life in miniature. It's an effect which for me might be my favourite aspect of Frieren's side characters. The story structure slows a whole life to be told through smaller slices. It's like the opening scene in Up, but every week. There are series which get dominated by cutting away to side characters telling entire stories on the fringes of the main series, and they're some of the most memorable moments, but they're not what the series is about. But in Frieren, I think there's a decent balance between that kind of independent storytelling and the main story. It's not just long-lived characters either. Some of the extra anime scenes dealing with the chivalric Order of Norm was a form of this. We get to see a few slices of the history of this organization before their resurgence and return. The dual time storytelling is instrumental to that. I think that's something I come back to, that it's the story's unique point of view that allows things like this to happen. Frieren's side characters can really shine because of the way the story is told. Frieren is looking to get to know humans, dwarves. It sometimes feels like she can take or leave some of the elves, but the side characters are defined from that point of view. It's a journey that retraces one a lifetime ago. It means we can get full stories and a couple of visits, but it also allows for us to visit characters only in the more important moments of their lives, with the time and distance in between enough to allow for genuine growth for most side characters. There's definitely an element of the designs in making side characters prominent and giving them ways of fighting or personality that just immediately inspire curiosity, a mystery wrapped as a person. Those designs make some small characters iconic. But the most compelling part of how Frieren handles side characters is always framing them in the point of view of the main cast. It's through their eyes, their development, that those on the side really get to shine. But I can see why they win popularity polls. The supporting cast can make this show. They can be just as fascinating in a few minutes as those we spend hours with. Hey, I've been Completely Learning. Thanks for watching. Plenty more coming, so sub if you want to see any of that, that kind of stuff. Videos, mainly. Alright, cheers.